Hi, I'm Andy Glass with WorkshopAddict.com. In my past couple of shops, I've had a dedicated outfeed table that served many purposes, from an outfeed table to assembly area, finishing, my workbench. I did absolutely everything on this 4x4 table. In this shop, I have a dedicated area for an assembly table, so I'm going to rebuild my outfeed table for dedicated outfeed for my table saw, and then I've got some storage underneath. So stick around, hope you enjoy. I start by placing a sheet of rigid foam on the shop floor and place my sheet goods on it. This prevents me from cutting into the floor. I break down the plywood with my track saw. Later I use an edge guide and a circular saw. I use my woodpecker's delve square to set the table saw blade height. Next I rip all the parts of the table saw. The first cut is always a little fat. I then adjust my fence to the final dimensions and rip the factory edge off the first part. This is a good habit to get into cleaning up those damaged factory edges. This entire build only needs 2 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood and a half sheet of 1/8 inch hardboard. Next, at the miter saw station, I can square up one end of each piece while they are bundled together. I then set my stop block to my desired length and flip the bundle and cut them to length. Bundling the parts together really saved me a lot of time. Here's a great tip when trying to keep something on edge at your bench. Take a spring clamp and put it on the opposite side you want to keep facing up. The weight of the spring clamp acts as a counterweight, preventing the board from falling over. Another great tip is to use a similar width board to help support your workpiece. The leg construction is a simple butt joint that makes an L-shaped leg. I start by applying some glue, brad nailing it in place, and then pre-drilling and driving screws to permanently secure it. I take a scrap block of plywood and hardboard and mark a line on where the stretchers will line up. I then apply glue, place the stretchers to the line, use a square to make sure it's 90 degrees, and take a couple brads to tack it in place. I then pre-drill and drive 5 screws per joint. I repeat the same process for all the stretcher and leg joints. The only difference is the bottom stretcher is 3 inches from the bottom of the leg to the bottom of the stretcher. When the assembly is complete, I place it on a flat surface to dry to ensure it stays flat. With both sides dry, I repeat the process to connect them with the 4 stretchers. With the Carcass upright, I install the middle supports on both the top and bottom. Being I am by myself for the first one, I use the right angle support to hold it in place and then shoot a couple brads, and then pre-drill and drive 2 to 3 screws per joint. My 2 nephews, Evan and Cole, showed up to help. Evan used the cordless nail gun and then pre-drilled while Cole followed up to drive the screws. Safety glasses are mandatory in the shop and kids are no exception. I then use a guide and a circular saw to cut the plywood for the top and shelf to size. Evan helped me lift the top in place. The unit was a bit out of square and the plywood was a bit oversized. I grabbed my block plane and took a few shavings to make it fit. Due to the construction, the bottom shelf needed to be cut in half to be inserted. I then cut out a piece of hardboard for the top. This is meant to be a wear surface. If it gets damaged or worn out, simply remove it and replace it with a fresh top. Here you can see the hardboard sits proud of the legs. Next, I glue up some plywood blocks to mount the leveling feet to. I use FastCap's 2P10 CA glue and activator to make quick work of this. I simply apply the super glue and then spray the activator on the opposite piece. I hold them together for a few seconds and they instantly bond. Next, I drill a hole in the center and use a tap to create threads for the bolt to screw into. You'd be surprised how strong these threads are. Cutting 4 walnut squares, I drill a couple counter bores for the nut and bolt. These will be the leveling feet. It will make sense in a bit. I place a washer in the top counter bore, I insert the bolt, I place a washer in the other counter bore, and then tighten on a nut. This assembly will screw into the block and make dialing in the table height super easy. I apply a quick chamfer with my trim router, but you'll notice later that I take off the corners at the miter saw station. I apply some activator and CA glue and tighten in those blocks in the corner. You'll notice that these adjustable feet screw in and the support block rests against that lower shelf for extra support. With the outfeed table completed, I can clean up the area and push it in place. Well, what do you guys think? I thought the project turned out great. It's a simple project. The joinery methods and all this stuff is very simple. It's a great starter project for someone just getting into woodworking. An outfeed table or assembly table. This is a multi-purpose table for someone just getting in the craft or maybe might not have all the room that I have here in my shop. Let me know below if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. What was your biggest takeaway of this project? Myself, I really like creating those self-leveling feet in the shop. Now, I could easily go out and buy something, but I didn't want to run into town, and I just used up some scrap hardware and scrap hardwoods that I had in my shop. I plan to do some drawers and cabinet doors to utilize this space underneath in the future, so make sure you hit the subscribe button to see some future videos on those. I'm Andy Glass with Workshop Addict. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.